Love is often described as an eternal flame, an unshakable force that binds two souls together. In the early days of love, it feels invincible, as if it will last forever. But as time passes, love, like the morning mist upon a mountain, begins to dissipate under the sun's relentless warmth. Have you ever experienced the moment when someone who once looked at you with warmth and affection now gazes past you with indifference? A partner who once cherished your presence now seems distant, as if they are standing in the same room but miles away in their heart. Why does this happen? How can love that once felt so deep suddenly fade into nothingness? Zen and Buddhist philosophy offer an explanation rooted in one of the fundamental truths of existence: impermanence and anicca. Everything in life, including emotions, relationships, and attachments, is in a constant state of change. The Buddha once said, "Just as a river never clings to the banks it passes, so too does the heart flow from one state to another." Understanding the transient nature of love does not make its loss any less painful, but it does provide a path to acceptance. When someone stops loving you, they rarely announce it with words. Instead, they express it through silent actions, two profound and unmistakable signs that reveal the death of what once was. In this video, we will explore these two signs, uncover the wisdom behind them, and learn how to embrace the Zen philosophy of letting go. Through an ancient parable, we will walk the path of a traveler who sought answers about love and loss, only to discover the deeper truth of impermanence. Love is not something we can possess, nor is it ours to keep. It is a guest that visits, stays for a time, and then moves on. The question is not why love changes, but how we can learn to let go with grace. Stay with us as we begin this journey into the nature of love, the pain of its departure, and the wisdom of release. There once was a traveler, a man of quiet nature and deep contemplation. He had wandered through life searching for understanding, seeking wisdom in the silent whispers of the wind and the gentle ripples of the river. One day, the traveler fell in love. He felt the warmth of companionship, the comfort of shared laughter, and the reassurance of a hand holding his. He believed this love was eternal, as solid as the mountains, as endless as the sky. But as time passed, something changed. It began subtly, like the first leaf that falls before autumn fully arrives. The one he loved, the one who had once walked beside him with certainty, began to drift. Words became fewer. Glances became shorter. The air between them thickened, heavy with unspoken truths. The traveler tried to ignore it at first. He convinced himself it was just a phase, a moment of distance that would pass. But deep in his heart, he knew something was fading. Desperate for answers, he sought out a wise old monk who lived in the mountains. This monk was known for his deep understanding of the human heart, his presence as calm and reflective as still water. "Master," the traveler said, bowing before him, "I fear that love is slipping from my grasp. The one who once walked with me now moves ahead, indifferent to whether I follow or not. What have I done wrong?" The monk closed his eyes, as if listening to a voice that only silence could reveal. Then he spoke. "When love fades, it does not vanish like smoke in the wind. It withdraws like the tide, revealing the shore that was always there beneath it. There are two things that people do when they lose their love for you. Watch closely, and you will see." The traveler leaned forward, his heart heavy yet hopeful. "The first," the monk said, "is that they withhold their presence." To illustrate, the monk led the traveler to a small garden where a tall tree stood, its branches wide, offering shade. A small bird sat upon one of its limbs, singing softly. "Do you see this bird?" the monk asked. The traveler nodded. "Now watch." The monk gently waved his hand. The bird, sensing a disturbance, flapped its wings and flew away. "Love," the monk said, "is like this bird. When it is comfortable, it lingers, singing, making a home in your presence. But when love begins to fade, it will withdraw. Subtly at first. They will no longer sit close to you. Their laughter will not be as free. Their words will no longer flow like a river, but drip like the last drops from an empty jug. This is the first sign." The traveler frowned. "But why do they not simply tell me? Why the slow withdrawal instead of honesty?" The monk smiled gently. "Because they themselves are still learning the truth. Love does not disappear all at once," he continued. "It fades like the last embers of a dying fire. A person does not wake up one morning and decide to stop loving. Instead, they realize it slowly with each passing day. Their heart becomes a silent traveler, already walking away while their body remains." The traveler looked down, feeling the weight of the monk's words settle into his chest. "So what should one do? Should I chase after them? Should I beg them to stay?" The monk shook his head. "Would you chase the bird that has flown away? Would you beg the tree to hold onto its falling leaves?" The traveler sighed. He already knew the answer. "No, master." "Then do not chase love that has begun to leave," the monk said softly. "To force love to stay is to turn it into something else, something no longer free, no longer true. Love that is forced becomes a prisoner in the heart's cage. The traveler closed his eyes, absorbing the truth of the lesson. But he was not yet satisfied. And the second thing? He asked. What else do people do when love fades? The monk's gaze was steady. They become someone else. He led the traveler further into the garden where a pond lay still and clear, reflecting the sky above. Look into the water, the monk instructed. The traveler bent down and his reflection stared back at him. It was familiar, yet somehow different in the shifting ripples. Now observe, the monk said. He picked up a small stone and dropped it into the pond. The water trembled. The reflection shattered. In its place was a new form, distorted, unfamiliar. When someone loses their love for you, the monk explained, they do not only withdraw their presence. They become someone else. The person who once laughed at your jokes, who once sought your company, will now seem like a stranger. Their face is the same, but their heart is elsewhere. Their words no longer carry warmth. Their touch no longer holds meaning. This is the second sign. The traveler clenched his fists. But why? How can love transform a person so completely? The monk looked at him with infinite patience. Because love is identity, he said. When two people are in love, they become intertwined, like two trees growing side by side, their roots tangled beneath the earth. But when love fades, those roots untangle. They seek different soil, a different sky. The person you see now is not the person who once loved you. They have shed that skin. You grieve not only for lost love, but for the person they once were. Tears filled the traveler's eyes. So what should one do when this happens? He whispered. How does one bear such loss? The monk took a deep breath as if inhaling the sorrow of the traveler and then exhaling it with infinite peace. You do nothing, he said. The traveler looked up confused. Nothing? Yes, the monk said. You accept. Accept, the traveler repeated, his voice breaking. Yes, the monk continued. Accept that all things change. Accept that love, like the seasons, must shift. Do not chase after what is already leaving and do not mourn what is already transformed. Instead, be still like the pond when the ripples fade and you will see the truth. And what is the truth? The traveler whispered. The monk smiled, his eyes filled with the light of deep understanding. The truth, he said, is that love does not belong to you. It never did. It flows through you, visits you, changes you, but it is not yours to own. When love leaves, do not grasp at it. Instead, bow to it. Thank it for its time and let it go like the last leaf in autumn. The traveler wiped his tears. He looked at the pond again, watching as the water slowly returned to stillness. And he understood. Love is not a possession but a guest. And when it leaves, one must not lock the door. One must bow and let it pass. The traveler left the monastery with the monk's words still echoing in his heart. Though his mind understood, his soul still wrestled with the weight of loss. How could something that once felt eternal slip away so silently? How could the warmth of love turn so effortlessly into cold indifference? He walked for days, through forests where the leaves whispered secrets to the wind, over hills where the sun kissed the earth, and along rivers that never held onto the water, that passed through them. And slowly, like the changing of the seasons, the traveler began to understand. In Zen teachings, one of the core truths of existence is impermanence, anicca. Everything in life, our thoughts, emotions, relationships, and even our own bodies is constantly changing. Suffering arises when we try to cling to what is meant to pass. The traveler realized that he had been holding on to love as if it were a possession, something that belonged to him, something he had the right to keep. But love, like the river, does not stop flowing simply because we wish it to stay. We suffer not because love leaves, but because we believe it was supposed to stay forever. But love was never ours to own. It was a guest, a beautiful, fleeting visitor that came, taught, and eventually moved on. Understanding this did not erase the pain of loss, but it transformed it, softened it, because love had not died, it had simply changed form. The monk had spoken of two signs, the withholding of presence and the becoming of someone else. At first, the traveler had seen these as betrayals, acts of cruelty. But now, as he walked through nature, he realized they were not acts of malice but acts of truth. 1. The withholding of presence. Love does not leave suddenly. It fades step by step. And as it fades, a person begins to withdraw. First, it's small. They no longer ask about your day with the same curiosity. They no longer linger in your presence the way they once did. Then it becomes undeniable. Conversations feel forced. Silence stretches between words like an empty road with no destination. It is painful, but it is also a gift. because it tells you the truth that words cannot. Love cannot be forced. It cannot be begged for or demanded. If someone has withdrawn their presence, it is not an invitation to chase them. It is a sign to turn inward, to offer presence to yourself, to sit with the pain, not run from it, to accept that love is not meant to be held onto, but honored for the time it was there. 2. The becoming of someone else. This was the most painful realization of all, that the person who once loved you is no longer the same person. Love changes us. When two people are in love, they share moments, experiences, and emotions that shape who they are. But when love fades, they start reshaping themselves, this time without you. They begin to laugh at different things, speak with a different tone, move in a direction that no longer includes you. This change is not a betrayal. It is simply nature at work. Just as a caterpillar does not remain a caterpillar, people do not remain in the same emotional state forever. And if we try to hold onto someone as they are changing, we are not loving them, we are clinging to a version of them that no longer exists. And in doing so, we suffer, letting go without bitterness. One of the greatest challenges in life is learning to let go without anger. When love leaves, it is easy to become bitter, to resent the person for changing, for withdrawing, for no longer loving us as they once did. But Buddhism teaches that resentment is like holding a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. So how do we release love without bitterness? 1. Honor what was. Instead of focusing on the pain of loss, remember the beauty of what once existed. Be grateful for the moments of love, for they were real. Even if love did not last forever, it was still meaningful. It still mattered. 2. Do not chase the bird. If someone has withdrawn their love, let them go. Chasing them will not bring them back. It will only prolong your suffering. True love is free, cannot be held in a cage. If love wishes to stay, it will. If it wishes to leave, honor its departure. 3. Release attachment, not love. Love does not have to be tied to possession. You can love someone and still let them go. You can wish them happiness, even if that happiness no longer includes you. That is the purest form of love. 4. Turn towards yourself. Often, when we grieve lost love, we feel as if we have lost a part of ourselves. But this is an illusion. You are still whole. Love did not complete you. It only reflected the love that was already within you. And that love, that is yours to keep. Love does not end, it transforms. At the end of his journey, the traveler came to a great river. He stood at its edge, watching as the water flowed endlessly forward. He thought about the one who had left him. He thought about the pain, the longing, the nights spent wondering why. And then, as he watched the river, he understood. Love had not disappeared. It had simply changed form. The love he once knew had become something else. A lesson, a memory, a part of his own growth. It had left him, but in leaving, it had also shaped him. The love that had once been in another's eyes was now in his own reflection. Love had not died. It had simply moved, as all things must. With this realization, the traveler did not cry. He did not grieve. Instead, he bowed not to loss, not to pain, but to love itself, in all its forms. And then he walked forward, not in search of love, but in acceptance of it, wherever it may come, and however it may leave. For love is not something to be held. It is something to be lived.